first we're, oh, and the meeting's being recorded, if you didn't know that. Now you do. At first, we're going to go over how to gather data. If you already have NVivo on your computer, I'm using the latest version of NVivo, so things might look a little different depending on if you have NVivo 12 or an early version versus the latest version, which is the 13th version. If you don't, that's fine. You can just follow along and download it later to try and use it yourself. NVivo is free through the university, so you can download it for free and use its features for free. So if you open up NVivo, oh, hold on, let me share my screen so you can actually see what I'm doing. Screen share. All right, so if you open up NVivo here, you'll see sample project multi-method on your open screen, and it should already be, once you log into your account, once you pull up NVivo, it'll ask you to log in if you haven't already through your American University email, and then just click sample project multi-method. And once you click that, it should open up something that looks like this, and it'll have data already downloaded for us to work with and to work through the workshop with. So if you have NVivo already, please do that. Open up just the sample project multi-method. So first, we're going to go over how to just like import a variety of sources. So if you go to like the import tab here, you'll see a bunch of different options. If you're importing a bunch of like literature sources to use with archival data, it can connect to Medley, EndNote, Zotero, RefWorks, or any bibliographic software that it connects with. You can also connect with SPSS, surveys like Excel or Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, then just general files on your computer, and captures from social media, captured files like Twitter data and stuff like that, or you can import another NVivo project. But files is what mostly we're going to be using. And these are all the supported file types, everything from documents to PDFs to audio files, video files, images and pictures, even Outlook messages. That a lot of file types are supported with NVivo. So that's one way to import the files. There's also one more way that's new with the newest version of NVivo I'm going to show you, where you can send it directly from Word, Excel, or Outlook into your NVivo account. That would be helpful if you're like working, you don't want individual photos to be their own file. Say you want all the photos you took at an archive to be in a single file, you can put them in a Word document and create a single file with all the photos. And if you go to Insert, you'll see this Get Add-ins button right here in the middle. If you click that, you can search for the NVivo add-in and hit add. I've already done that just to save some time, but that's how you would do it. Because you're an AU affiliated person, you won't require an additional purchase, and you would just hit add here and it will be added to your computer, to your Word account. And then under the home screen, you'll see send to NVivo here. So if you send to NVivo, you could just click that button and this NVivo integration side panel will pop up. You have the option of like putting in a summary or any notes that you'd like to be included, and then you would just hit send file. You don't have to do all that. You can just hit send file. Sorry about that. Go. Oh.
We can still see it if it makes you feel better.
Okay, great. Okay, I can't click it because this keeps popping up for some reason, but if you need a vaccine, there's a bunch in Maryland right now, apparently, and I'm getting notifications for all of them. Okay. And that, okay. There we go. All right, so you'll get, once you click send file, you'll see at the bottom where it says 0% complete, or it'll say once it has completed, your file has been sent to NVivo, and you would just open NVivo back up and then go to the modules tab and collect office files. And then the file that you sent over will be right here. If you sent over multiple and you don't want to add them all, like if you're working in different NVivo projects and you only want some of them on this particular NVivo project, you can just check the boxes of the files you want and then hit add to project. So I'm just going to do that, add to project, and it'll come up right here. And you have the option of adding a description and some other stuff. I've done it already just to test it, so that's why there's two. I'm just going to delete one of them. But yeah, that's how you would send it directly from Word. The same process would work for Excel. I don't have Outlook to show you on my computer because I don't have an Outlook account, but Outlook would work similarly. In the Home tab, you would hit Get Add-ins, and the same thing would pop up. Some box would pop up and you'd type in NVivo and add it to the Outlook account. In the web version of Outlook, you would open any email, and in the top right corner of that email would be 3 little dots, which is like an more action icon. It's just 3 dots. You'd click that, and then at the bottom of those options would have add-ins, and you would do the same thing. It's just add NVivo to your Outlook, whether you're using web or the Outlook like app or whatever. So those are a couple ways to either import them through using the directly with NVivo by selecting the files, or sending them from either Word, Outlook, or Excel. So those are some options. And again, if you're not working with the newest version of NVivo, you won't have the option of sending them directly from Word and Excel and Outlook. So next, we're just going to go over how to organize data. So all your files that you've uploaded should come up here unless you've added them to file classifications, which is where the sample project we're working with has done. So the file I just sent just went automatically to files, but if you want to organize it more, you can do file classifications. So this person's, the person that made the sample project organized them by interviews, GIS pictures, general photos, and then references as well. So if you want to add classification, you would just hit the right click the file and do a new folder. And for file classifications, if you want to do a classification under files, which is what this general GIS interview and references are, you would just hit new classification. And then within that, you can also, so say I have a bunch of references I want to add from like a literature review, I can import directly from Zotero or another reference software. And if you hit that, you could select like multiple references at the same time and then just upload them all at the same time, which is pretty helpful if you have a lot of references that you're doing for archival work for like historical approach with a lot of like literature. And then the same thing can be done for the other ones as well. But yeah, that's one way to like just organize everything. You can also organize them by archive. You can make that a classification. If you're working in multiple archives, you could have DC archive versus archive in Maryland, et cetera. You can make those, if you want to separate your files by what archive you got them from, that's also possible. Or you can do type of files, like which basically shown here with interviews versus photos versus whatever. And then the other thing I'm going to show you is how to organize by cases. So in yours, in the file that you've opened, people and places should be cases, 2 of the cases that's already added. That'll be on the left-hand side of your screen right here. If you hit people, you'll see that they have interview participants and survey respondents. This was an anonymous survey, so that's why the survey respondents are just numbered. And then interview speakers won't be there because I'm about to add it. But basically, this allows you to organize by all the different people that may be coming up in your archives. So if you want to compare coding from how people were talking about Martin Luther King Jr. versus how they were talking about Malcolm X, like in a historical archive, you can separate those references by cases and then use the cases to compare coding and themes by cases. So that's why cases is a little bit different from coding. Cases tends to be people, places, I'm going to add time periods. So in cases, you can right click and do new folder and then type time period and hit OK. I've already done it, so it's already here. So I'm not going to do it again because it would just add 2. And then that'll allow you to send all of your references into different time periods, which is pretty helpful for organizing like archival data throughout time if you're comparing how things are changing over a period of time. And that'll allow you to compare your codes through over time as well. And then you also have people and places. This one only uses Carroll County in the example, but within that you can do specific things within a place. So for instance, this person did landmarks and city, schools, and organizations. That's also an option if you're looking at how a specific community is talking about different things in the past versus present. But yeah, so for time period, we can pull open like any file. I have one here, and it's like just a yearbook document taken from like a school yearbook. And what I did was I went through, and where things were talking about different time periods, I highlighted them. And then if you have the time periods pulled up on the right, you can just drag and drop them into that reference. And I've already done that, so that's why the references didn't go up. But if I do it with 1800s, oh, I already did that one too. Let's see. There we go. So this 1899 I had not coded yet to 1800s. So if you highlight it and drag it and drop it into 1800s, that the reference will go up to 2, which means I have 2 codes under there. And if I double click it, I'll see the 2 references. So you can do that within a file. So like that's what I was doing here with this yearbook file, is coding anything with like references to dates. So I can compare like how things are changing over time. But if you also just have like, if we go back to our file classifications, I'm just going to go to images and double click it. You have like a lot of images. If you have the date they were taken, like these were taken in 2009, you could also just code, like send the entire image over to that time period or file. Oh, I forgot, you have to right click and then hit open file. Okay. Yeah, right click and then hit open file. And you'll get this entire photo. You can put like a note on it if you'd like, and you can code that note if you'd like. But I'm just gonna code the entire photo. I'm gonna assume it's taken in the 1800s. I don't really know, but you can code the entire photo. So you can code the entire file over to cases, either people, places, or a time period. So if I know this is a particular place, like if this is Marshallburg Harbor, I can just drag it and drop it, and then this will pop up and I can write the new code I want. And then it'll pop up right here. If anything else comes up that you want to code to that case, you would just drag it and drop it into that code instead of dragging it to the bottom to create a new one. All right, I'm gonna exit out of this. But that also shows you how you can do an code with an image. So we're gonna pull open another one, open file. And then this is a picture of a lighthouse. Instead of coding the entire image, I'm just gonna select the lighthouse part and I'm gonna code that to landmarks. Oops. I was until it popped open. Yeah, so I'm gonna code it to landmarks here. If I knew which lighthouse it was specifically, I could code it there too, but I don't, so I'm just not gonna mess with that. But yeah, if you wanna code it specifically to one of the capes, you could as well. And keep in mind, you can also make your own codes like under each ones if you want to have something more specific. All these were made by someone. So if I want to code the beach, just the beach part, I would just highlight the beach part and drag it and drop it over and just put beach. And it's all going to be in alphabetical order, so that's why I went to the top. And you can also create like a parent code by right-clicking and then, oops, nope. Oh, so you can aggregate coding from children and create a child code, which is basically like, that's what these are, a code under a code. So if I want Marshall Harbor to, oh, whoops, to be a child code under Carroll County, I could just drag it and drop it in there. And now it's a child code under Carroll County. All right. So yeah, that's a few ways to just organize the data under cases. So people, places, time period, and then you can code within the cases and create like more specific locations, etc., or people or time periods. It just helps organize the data. Now we're going to go over like coding for themes, which is what this under coding, you should have this codes right here. If you click it, then you'll have a bunch of coding that's already been done on the sample project. So for instance, one of the codes is infrastructure. So I could like go ahead and highlight select that lighthouse and just drag it and drop it to infrastructure. If I want to drag it and drop it down and create its own code of, I don't know, human development, because a human built it, I could. and then that'll create a new code with one reference. And you can keep dragging and dropping things into each code or creating new ones, and then you'll see how all the codes start to add up. Once you get references that have a lot of codes, such as this one that has economy, then you can start looking at what codes within that are more specific that you can start adding. And if you want to make sure that it counts that to the total references, you would just right click and hit aggregate coding from children. That will make it add up the codes from the more specific ones that you have included under it. So that's how to code like photos. You would just select a specific part of the photo or the whole thing. If you want to do PDFs, I'm going to go back to our file classification and go to references and open up this references and just open a file. Oh, this is another map or a photo. Oh, because I hit GIS. Sorry about that. I'm going to hit references again because that should have PDFs. Yeah, so these are all PDFs or web pages, newspaper articles. I want to open a newspaper article, just highlight it and hit open file. All right, so this is a PDF newspaper article, the same type of thing. You would just highlight instead of highlighting a photo, you're just highlighting a piece of text, and you would just drag it and drop it into the codes or into cases if you're dealing with a person, place, or time period that you want to organize by. If you're working with like a theme, you want to drag it and drop it into whatever themes you are developing in your project. So let's see. So this one's talking about prices or funding. I'm gonna highlight it and then, whoops, highlight it and drag it and drop it into funding. Yeah, and then that'll create a funding tab right here. So that if you're comparing things over time and trying to see how like themes are changing and also across different sources, whether it's newspaper articles or photos or yearbooks, you have the option of coding it regardless of what kind of file it is. If it's a PDF, you can still highlight it and code it. If it is a photo, like a JPEG file, you can still highlight a part of it or the whole thing and code it to whichever theme or case that you need to code it to. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to code videos and audio files. So if you're finding like audio files in the archive, like old broadcast or news reports, or you're doing oral histories and doing like audio interviews or videos, that is also something that can be done. So if we go back to our file classifications and we can pull up interviews. We have these interviews. I'm gonna open Betty and Paul's. It might be because I already have it open. Yeah, I do. So Betty and Paul's right here. And if it is a video, you'll see the video, the audio, and you can also do any transcribing in NVivo directly if you want to. or you can just take notes on each little portion of the video. So if you want to do that, the way you would do it is you would go up to the top. Sorry, I'm just moving the, go up to the top where it says video, and you will, to the far right, you have to click that button, see edit. You just hit edit, and it will pull open an edit tab, and that will let you edit all of these timestamps and the text within them. So you could just directly transcribe it, or you can just take notes on each timestamp that you'd like. And you can change the timestamps. They don't have to be the ones that you see here. That's just what the other person has added. So I can put like 0. Yeah, so I can edit the timestamp and do whatever I see fit. So if you want to do it in 10-second intervals, 1-minute intervals, etc., that's completely fine. And edit all the text. This is already done for you, but if you were just uploading a video, it would be blank and you would have to add it in yourself. You can also just upload a transcript, which is what under the interviews list that we pulled up, that's what Martha's is. It's just a transcript. It doesn't have a video. And it would be the same exact process. You can just highlight it and code it by dragging and dropping. For the video files, the only difference is you'll have the video and the audio at the top. So the other thing you can do is once you've coded the either your notes or the transcription that you've created, you can go to the top where you see this like strips and hit show coding strips. And it will show you, it will do this on all of your sources. If you hit show coding strips, it will show you at what part you've coded each thing, and kind of like in a highlighted, each code will have a different color. And then also it will show you at the top here. Here we go. I just had it dragged down, but it'll show you also where it was in the audio. So if you're looking at the audio and you want to know at what timestamp, you can also see it here and down here. And once you scroll across, well, this one's short, so you can't scroll, but if you scrolled across in a longer video, it would include the whole thing. Yeah, and close that. All right, and then there's just regular coding of like any documents that you have. The same thing, you would just highlight, drag and drop to create a new one, or drag it to codes you already have. The other option that you can do is under this, next to the coding strips, you have this annotations button, and you can hit view annotations, and the person that did this one already has one of Paul is talking about permits for septic systems. These permits are required because of infrastructure, and just like gave a note to the context of the interview. You can do that for any file if you need greater context of how it fits into the archive, how it fits into whatever you're studying. If you're not allowed to take photos in the archive and you just had to take notes and upload the sources later, you can then put those notes here in the annotations tab, which whatever you need the annotations for, it's pretty helpful just to like give yourself some more context and remember. All right, then the last part we are gonna go over is how to analyze all this data. So we have a few options for data analysis. I'm gonna go up to the Explore tab at the top, And I really like for archival work, I think comparison diagrams are very interesting. So I'm gonna show you that first. So you can compare files, you can compare codes, and you can compare cases, or you can compare any type of classification. So if you compare files, you have the option of any file. I'm just gonna do 2 literature files, if I can find 2. Oh, I'll do 2 news articles, that works. So I'm gonna do the 2 news articles that we have for this sample. I'm gonna compare them and just hit OK. And then what's gonna pop up is this diagram that'll show you all the codes that these 2 newspaper articles had in common and the ones that they didn't. So real estate development was only coded for this Crossroads Marks 30 Years newspaper article, whereas the fishermen spread shells to restore the habitat article was coded for funding and Cedar Island, and those, but not that was not shared with this newspaper article. And then in the middle, you'll see all the codings that they did share: natural environment, economy, policy management, habitat, ecosystem services, fishing, and agriculture. Both of those newspaper articles had those. So that is pretty helpful if you're working with newspaper articles or something like that, that you want to compare how different newspaper sources are talking about things, or how a single source like the New York Times is changing and talking about comparing things over time. That's also helpful. You can also compare diagrams by codes and cases. So if we pop up cases, again, we're going to have people, places, and time periods. I don't have a lot of things coded to the time periods one just because that wasn't already uploaded. There's only going to be a few references to those, so I'm not going to do the time periods one, but that would probably be the most helpful for archival data, is comparing the codes over time. So I'm just going to do people and see. I'm going to compare Barbara's interview with Betty's interview and see what they had in common. Wow, not a lot. This could also be because one of them is a lot longer than the other, but Barbara has a lot more codes than Betty. But they do have a few in common: real estate development, jobs and cost of living, balance, habitat, water quality, economy, and natural environment are all the codes in the middle that they have in common. And then Barbara has a lot of other codes as well. So that is one example of how to use comparison diagrams. We can also do some queries. We can do a text search, or actually, no, we're going to do a word frequency search, sorry. Back to the Explore tab, hit word frequency. And the cool thing about NVivo is you can do a word frequency in a specific file. So what are the top used words in a single file, like an interview file, or you can do them across all of your files to see what are the top most used words in your entire project, or you can be more specific and do selected items, which if you go under codes, you can see, cases. If you go under cases, you can see what the top used words were for particular people, or across all of your people if you just want to check the people box. You can do particular places, or you can do particular time periods. So there's not a lot coded for time periods, so I'm just going to do people again. And I'm going to do the top used words for the survey, all of the survey respondents, and just hit OK. I'll do 50 most used words. And I'm going to do a minimum word length of 4 just to get out words like the and just hit run query. It might take a minute depending on what. Okay, never mind. I'll just do the interview to participants then. It might just be because of the file type. There we go. The most frequent words. Okay. Across all cases. Okay, sorry, I don't know what was up with that, but now we have something. So the 50 most used words, the most used word is people, and it's used 226 times. Island, just. If you get a word like just and you want to take it out just because it's not giving you like any substantive data, you can just right click it and add a word to stop word list. So if it gets that word, it won't count it and it'll just throw it out. And it'll give you a different word from the next most used word. So on the side, you'll see summary, which is what we were just on. You can also click word cloud and it'll just show it to you in a different format with the most used words as the largest word and the least used words as the smallest words. Yeah. And a tree map and cluster analysis as well. So it's just like how similar the words were to each other. So that's interesting to, if you want to use selected items to just select particular parts of your data. You could do that for particular archives as well. If you've organized your data by particular archives, you want to see what the most used words are for some archives versus others, or for some sources or types of sources versus others. And then another thing you can do is if you go to the Explore tab and you hit text search instead, you can search for a particular word. So say I want to see environment. And I'm going to select items. And if I go to cases, I could see how this word is being used over time. If I had enough coded to these, I can see how it's being used in different places, or I can see how different people are using it. So I'm just going to see how the interview participants are using it and hit OK. And you could also, if you want to do stemmed words, I'm doing exact matches, so they have to say environment exactly. But if there's like synonyms for environment, you can like go down and make it less specific by just moving this tab right here. You can also, if you want to do like 2 words, like or trees, I don't know. You can do that, or you can do and. You can use those for that as well. And you just hit run query. Okay, I don't know why it keeps returning no results.
You might have to expand on the plus symbol.
Oh, so if I do that, okay. I'm gonna see how these 3 people are using it then. But if you wanted to do all the people, you just check all those boxes. Okay, so we have a couple references. Barbara's mentioned environment 6 times, Charles mentioned it once. And if you go to references, you'll see each of the reference. So those are all 6 times they mentioned environment. And if you go to text, it'll pull open the documents where those are too, if you want further context. And then tree map, you'll have like the stems of where it was mentioned as well. right? And then if you want to save any of these queries, you would just hit save results here. And you could name it and you could give it a description if you want to. I'm just going to leave it blank and hit OK. And then it should save to, once it saves. It might take a second to load. Sometimes NVivo takes a bit, especially if you're on Zoom while you're using it. So then it should be added to the queries down here. Yeah. Environment search right there. So if you want to save any of the things you find, you can just save them from there, and then they'll be added to the query results down at the bottom on the left-hand side of the menu. And then lastly, there's like another thing I'd like to go over. We do have a complete like tutorial on the CTRL website for using NVivo for literature review, but because you often use a lot of literature while you do archival work, I thought I would just mention it, that for the file classifications, if you go back to that on the left-hand side and then hit the references tab, you can do use it for literature review as well. If you want to like go through each reference and code the references, code the abstracts, etc., you can use the text search feature to do the same thing basically and find sources that are talking about the topics you're looking for. It's just another way to organize your literature and like build a literature review and different topics. And the same text searches that I showed you for doing data analysis will also work for the literature if you want to use or and, or do this different stemmed synonyms and words, that will also work. And you can search through your literature that way as well. So you can see that they have like about 26 different articles uploaded. If you want to use the features for that as well, it makes it a lot easier to find things and build your literature review and build your literature topics. But that is its kind of own tutorial on its own, and we do have that uploaded. So I didn't want to spend too much time going over that because it's on the website and its own tutorial that you can download and watch and go through. And I wanted to leave some time for questions. So since we have about 15 minutes left, are there any questions or anything that y'all would like to see more of or have me go through again?
I have a question in the chat about what's the main differences or different purposes for file classification versus case classification?
So file classification is mainly for what are the different types of data you're using. So for this example, they have pictures, general images, they have GIS like maps, they have interview data, and they have literature review data. So that's like the types of data they're using. Whereas case classification is like references to different people, different places, and different, I've added time periods just because I thought that was relevant for archival work. And you can add whatever you want. It doesn't have to be people, places, and time periods. You can create your own, just like you can create your own file classifications. But that is the main difference. It's different types of data versus different, like where the data is coming from, whether it's person, place, thing.
Thank you. Another question we have too in the chat is, when you were doing that comparison visualization, were you comparing two different files / PDFs of interviews?
Yes, I was comparing two interview files. But you can, depending on what you're selecting, you can compare whatever you like. You can compare two different files. You can compare two different cases or two different codes.
And then another question. Oh, actually, we have some questions from participants too. So I think if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself too.
I was wondering, how do you move a file so it's like underneath the case? Like if you want to associate a file with like a certain person, how do you move it? Do you just drag and drop?
So under people like these interview participants here.
Yeah, if you wanted to put like the transcript of their interview underneath their name, can you do that?
Yeah, so you can actually even do, for interview, you can actually do what's called auto coding. I did not show you just because it tends to take a lot of bandwidth and sometimes it goes really slow. But if you go back to, let me open a interview file. Here we go. So Betty and Paul, if you look at their, all right, yeah. All right, if you look at their content page, it says it has the speaker as the as one of the columns, which the person added. Again, once you upload a video file, the only thing that would be there is the video and the audio. Once you do your transcription or notes, you can also put another column for speaker, and you could then go up to the video tab, hit auto code, and it'll do it for you automatically. You can use existing coding pattern, or no, sorry, use the style and structure. And the style and structure is this that you've created, the speaker content. If you hit use style and structure and hit next, speaker is the available structure because that's the one that you've added to it. And select that. Oops. Sorry, selected. Hit next. So you can do it under existing coder case, or you can create a new coding case for each speaker. So Henry and Betty are the speakers here. So those, and the interviewer, I can't remember who that is. But so you can create it new or add it to existing if you already have cases for them. They already have cases. So I'm just going to do that. And then you would hit it at location. If it's already coding to an existing coder case, you won't need location because it's already going to wherever it already is. But if you're doing a new one, then it would either be cases or codes. So I'm going to have it as a case, and then I'm just going to name it test autocode cases, and then hit finish. And just wait a second. And then if you go down 2 cases, there it is. And it's added the 3 speakers, Betty, Henry, and Paul. But you can also do it automatically. So that's how you can do it automatically to save some time. But you can also just add the entire file under cases as well. So if I wanted to add one to Betty, for instance. I thought there was a way to do it here. There's not. Well, whatever coding, files. Yeah, it does it automatically because whatever thing whatever you have coded as Betty, 2 cases, it'll automatically pull up the files here. So if you hit that, if you hit references, it'll pull up all references to her. If you hit files, it'll pull up the 2 files that she's in.
Okay, so you have to code it to get it to I guess, align with a certain case. You can't like drag and drop it underneath the name or anything like
You can
that.
drag it and drop it. So say this, all right, let me go to this one. This is like Mike, whoever. If I want to create a case for him, I would just drag and drop his name. So I'm going to highlight his name, drag and drop it, and put Mike, whoops, not Nike, Mike, what was his last name? Shutak, and hit OK. And now he should be under there. Yeah, with one reference and one file. So if I hit file, it'll pull open this whole file. If I hit reference, it would just pull open what I highlighted. So yeah, that's how you would create a case, is you can just highlight it and drag it and drop it and add it. Well, it's
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's one way to create it. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So I don't really know how to phrase this actually. So once I'm working on this, is everything automatically saved, or do I have to keep, I don't know, is there like a save button, or every time I revisit this, will it look exactly like this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so every time you pull it up, it should open up whatever the last thing you saved is. NVivo will ask you every 15 minutes if you want to save the project. It normally does it too often for me. But yeah, NVivo will ask you every 15 minutes if you want to save the project. If you go to home, I think there's also a save button. Yeah, the save button's up here at the top, right here.
Okay, thank you.
Word, yeah.
I have a question that may be very general in nature, but if you have a majority of your historical archival material in Zotero currently, I understand you can import to NVivo. It seems to me the only advantage to still keeping a copy in Zotero is to actually be able to translate the citations into the academic style of the publication or whatever that you're working with, because that's a function that NVivo does not do, correct? But all the other advantages of the analysis, the coding, the themes, etc., that NVivo provides. So if I'm continuing on this, it seems I need this two-track, Zotero and NVivo, correct?
Yeah, I don't believe NVivo does any kind of like making of bibliographies automatically. So yeah, I would definitely keep the Zotero file still. I'd have to check and make sure of that because I've never tried to do that, but I don't think that NVivo does any kind of like automatic bibliography.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? I think Hannah is raising their hand.
Yes. How do you, does it just reference automatically, or is there a way to like double click to add a reference like you would a code?
Oh yeah, so for references, I'm gonna go back to where they are. Okay, so, oops. All right, I'm gonna go back to file classifications and under references. So keep in mind that like the person that created this sample has created these file classifications. So if you just upload a reference, it would just go under files. Like it would just go, like I uploaded workshop descriptions, it would just go there. Because they've created file classifications, they can upload it here. And you can just hit, click it, and then just import. So you can do import from Zotero if you're working with Zotero or any other bibliography software, or you can just do a select file and import it from here. Yeah, so it's just right click and either import from a bibliography software or import from your computer, which is right there, and browse and select the file you want and hit open and upload.
But how do you get certain references to get attached to like a case or a person, for example? Like when you click on like, I don't know, people or something like that, it says like codes and then like references and then a number next to it. How do you get the reference? Like, how does it get attached? How does like, what's the difference between like coding it and then it being listed as like a reference? Like you said with the reference, you see the entire file.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So references is just, that is a reference to something you've coded. It doesn't mean it's a reference to a piece of literature. It's just using the word reference. So I could also name this literature instead of reference, if that makes sense. If you want to have a piece of literature coded, you would just do it the same way that you would code anything else, is you would highlight the part that you want to code and drag it and drop it into that code.
Oh, and then so then it would be, there'd be one reference. And if you clicked on, you see the entire document, but if you clicked on.
Yes. If you clicked on file, you would see the entire document. If you clicked on reference, you would just see the part that you highlighted and coded.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions or comments or anything? Is there anything in the chat, Eric or Lindsay?
One quick question. This is one thing that I'm still a little bit confused about. I might have asked this when I talked to Eric about this many moons ago, but optimal character recognition with PDFs, something like that, you still have to go through that process where you scrub the PDF, do you not, before you can upload it into NVivo? Yes, that is needed, Eric says. I still hope the technology has advanced to avoid that, but thank you very much. You still have to go through that data scrubbing process before you can pull it into NVivo. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to be able to highlight the PDF, yes, you would need to do that. If you're just gonna, you could like upload it as a photo, and then you can just do that like selection thing that you saw me do with photos, but then it's going to treat that as a photo and you're not going to get the text recognition.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other final questions for Beverly?
See a question in the chat about having to scrub a Word doc. I don't believe so. That should be, because it's as a Word file itself, that should automatically, it's only when PDFs when it might have an image file potentially, or it's a low quality scan.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a readable PDF, it should be fine. That means you can highlight the text. If it's not, if it's like a photo, then the same thing would apply that I showed you from the other photos, where it's gonna select like a portion of it. You can still do that. It's just not gonna do text recognition.
Yeah, Jason, you have a question for Beverly?
Yeah, I guess this is just kind of a practical question. So, because so much archival, research has been the archives have been digitized and continue to be, as we kind of peruse things online. I mean, right now my normal practice the past year, 2 years has been to use Zotero actually to just grab documents, get screenshots and things like that, and then use tags within Zotero.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would you recommend, or is best practice sort of as we're browsing, whether it's, collections at the British Museum or something like that, that we basically use NVivo as a way to do that initial gather. Because my kind of, I'm interested in NVivo as once we get to the analysis part, not so much like the grabbing of, if I'm just trying to look for stuff and see what might be interesting as a kind of data set, then part of me is like, I just like the ease of use with Zotero.
Yeah.
Then figure out, what I might do in terms of coding and so forth afterward. I guess, like, what's just your experience and sort of what's your best practice? And if anyone's got anything on that, I'd be curious to
Yeah.
get.
So for me, I admit I have not used Zotero very much other than to learn how to import things to NVivo. I've mainly just been using NVivo. I do think, though, that NVivo is worth using in addition to Zotero, just because for more than just data analysis, just because you can find themes to later use for data analysis easier with NVivo. Like if you're doing like the things I showed you earlier with seeing which codes are different documents have in common, you can just do that between two documents, and later as you're searching for things, you can use those as search terms then to search for further literature in your literature search. So for me, it's like using NVivo early helps you later and helps you gather more information because you're seeing what themes are emerging as you're going. And I think that's super helpful. I think it's also helpful to keep it all organized because the more organization you do on the front end, the easier the analysis gets on the back end, at least for me. And yeah, that's just my experience with it. So I would suggest using it at the beginning, but everyone has a different style, so whichever. Cool. Christina?
Hi, yes. So you sort of did like kind of the order of, I guess, how you would go about doing things with a file, but I kind of just wanted to ask you an overview of like, what would be like your standard, just like verbally, your order of operations? Like you've imported a file, and then like, what would you do like step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with that file kind of typically?
Okay. Well, it depends a little bit on like where you are in your process. If you are at the point where you have file classifications, like you have a bunch of files, once I imported it, I would import it to a specific file classification. So if I have enough files where I need to divide them by type of data, whether it's an interview or a photo or a map, GIS image, or if it's a reference to literature, I use a lot of newspaper articles and yearbook stuff. I researched schooling. So the last archival project I did, I was using like a lot of yearbook photos and pictures and analyzing yearbook shots. So I would immediately add it to file classifications as my first step. And I like separating my data. And then I think for me, I would also add it to cases as well. So people, places, time period, just like, because to me that gives context before I start coding it. Like where in my data are these codes going to be? Where in my data is this piece of data going? Is this specific piece of data going to fit? And then I would code it for themes using codes. So then looking at like the attitude, balance, economy, like any references to the codes I'm working with, how it fit into those, or if any new themes popped up that I need to code and create new codes for.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Beverly? Okay, well, thank you so much, Beverly, for doing this session. If you do think of a question, you are always welcome to email us at ctrl@american.edu. and I will make sure your question gets to Beverly and or Eric to answer it. We would really appreciate your feedback. Shada, if you could post the link again to our evaluation survey, that would be much appreciated by everybody at CTRL. So thank you all so much for being here. Great to have you.
And if there are any other workshops you'd like, please also mention that in the feedback if there's any that you think would be helpful. And if you're interested in the one I did on social media analysis that's also recorded, feel free to email about that as well.
Yes, definitely email us for any of your questions. Great, thank you all.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys.
Fantastic job, Beverly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yours are always very, very well received. How long do we have you at CTRL? Do you want to do more of these?
Well, yeah, actually, I had talked to Aaron while Eric was out